In the quiet, unknowable depths beyond the edge of known space, where light itself forgets to shine and time ebbs like gasped whispers, gears much larger than planets were turning. For millennia, they turned unnoticed by mortal minds, for these were the machinations of cosmic gods, entities far beyond the scope of galaxies or universes. Among the ancient, there stood two primordial forces, Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds, and the Celestials, architects of existence itself. They had always coexisted in a delicate detente, not out of peace, but out of scale. Their purposes, though divergent, rarely intersected. The Celestials, those titanic beings of vast intellect and unfathomable power, had long walked the fabric of creation, sculpting galaxies, seeding life, judging planetary civilizations for continued existence or annihilation. They called it order, cosmic order. Galactus, born of a universe that existed before the Big Bang, embodied entropy, a being tempered in fire and silence whose hunger was legend. Where the Celestials created with intricate foresight, Galactus consumed with divine indifference. To him, worlds were sustenance. Civilizations deep or advanced were molecular seasons of flavor. His actions weren't cruelty, they were function. Natural, inevitable. But all things in the arc of eternity follow a pattern: creation, conflict, collapse, and rebirth. And now the gears were turning toward conflict. It began with the disappearance of the star system, known by mortals as Kul-Vorax. Kul-Vorax had been under celestial observation since the time of Zorek judgment, an era so ancient only the living tribunal had memory of it. The Celestials, particularly Arishem the Judge and Exitar the Executioner, had seeded Kul-Vorax's second planet with experimental Genesis code, a form of life-form evolution designed to test socio-psychological development under the influence of quantum empathy fields. 10 million years of careful monitoring bore fruit. The planet's inhabitants, the Vosari, evolved to intertwine their being with the consciousness of others, rendering war obsolete, economies irrelevant. A golden civilization that balanced technology and harmony in a way unfathomable to most mortals. To the Celestials, they were a perfect civilization, a proof of hypothesis. Then, it vanished. Just gone. Sensors on the World Forge, the celestial archive in the still eye of the Chizar Nebula, blinked to darkness. The planet, the star, the system, consumed, silent, utterly erased. The psychic echo of the Vosiri's collective consciousness screamed through no space like the death cry of a nebula. A single signature remained in the void, the anti-life frequency of Galactus. Inside the One Gaze, the meeting sanctuary of the Celestials that exists between layers of reality, 12 of the remaining Celestials gathered within a star-sized auditorium of tesseract light and time-locked perception. These figures, monumental in presence, sat in silence made from centuries. Arishem loomed larger than most, his tri-eyed mask flickering with judgmental energy. "The balance trembles," he said, his voice both heard and felt as gravitational font. "We cannot allow Galen of Ta to disrupt our symmetry again." Nazar the Calculator, electric and fractal in manifestation, processed trillions of outcomes before responding. Entropy is in his nature, and yet there are alterations in his pattern. He no longer feeds indiscriminately. The targets are precise. "Motive?" asked Jemiah the Analyzer. "Theories suggest sentience, evolution of cognition beyond need, towards intent." Other Celestials stirred. That was dangerous. If Galactus had altered his hunger to target only seeded experimental systems, like Kul-Vorax, then he was no longer a roaming force of nature. He had become a predator of design, a threat to the great experiments of life, to the celestial order. And such threats demanded resolution. "We strike?" asked Tefral the Surveyor. "Not strike," said Arishem. "We warn. One voice will go to him. One voice will offer balance." All eyes turned toward a looming figure cloaked in solar threads. Eson the Searcher, the oldest, the explorer of infant dimensions, the bearer of the star core spear. Far beyond the galactic maw where black holes sip on star bones, Galactus hovered omnipotent over a dying planet, Shkar-Dun, an artificial world coated in quantum circuit intelligence. His herald, a twin-faced entity called Mur, knelt at the edge of the planet's molten sky. "The intellect resists, my master," Mur said. "They plead." From inside his celestial armor, Galactus stirred, a voice like galaxies unraveling. Pleading is noise when the song of oblivion crescendos. He extended his arm. Vast conduits emerged from his palms, absorbing not just physical matter, but the information soul of the world. Cities disintegrated into quantum code. He consumed it all. And then, he felt it. A ripple. A shadow larger than himself emerging from folded hyperspace. Galactus turned. From the churning void stepped Eson the Searcher. Larger than galaxies, older than time. They stood in silence, cosmic archons observing each other without the irrelevance of words. But Eson spoke. "Galen, the balance is crumbling beneath your tread." Galactus replied with faint amusement. "I bring balance, Ancient, the balance of hunger and the truth of necessary oblivion. You consume only those seeded by our hands. You are interfering. You encroach upon divine work beyond your comprehension." "Divine?" Galactus rumbled. "Celestials play God with life. I damn what comes after gods. You threaten the spiral pattern. We cannot permit this selective consumption. Leave creation untouched henceforth." Eson raised his spear, rippling with cosmic boundaries. Galactus narrowed his glowing eyes. "Or face celestial judgment." Galactus, vast as concept, stood in eerie stillness. "Then call your judgment, Starborn. I do not fear myth rites." And Galactus dissipated, blinking into transdensity space with a thought. Eson lingered, then turned. Judgment had been passed. In the days that followed, several more seeded worlds went silent, devoured, erased from existence. And at each, traces of Galactus's new herald, Mur, were found. The Celestials convened again. The time for warning had passed. The time for intervention. War had come. "He has declared open war on the work of the Starsmiths," boomed Arishem. "Unleash the Executioner." A voice unused since the death of the Titan King echoed as Exitar the Executioner opened his eyes. Planets trembled in their path as he descended toward their final judgment. Alongside him marched 3 other Celestials, each of incalculable power. There would be no more warnings, a direct confrontation across the tapestry of creation itself. But Galactus, he was prepared. No longer a wanderer of necessity, he had embedded the world hearts of every consumed civilization into a core reactor of willpower, transforming not only his armor but his essential being. This was no longer a hungry god. This was a being of design, purpose, war. The void held its breath. Galactus hovered at the edge of all realities, surrounded by the silence of dead stars and forgotten laws. Cloaked in rebuilt god steel, powered by the last screams of devoured civilizations, he did not wait as a force of nature, but as a calculated storm. He had made his choice. He would consume what even gods dared not touch. The Celestials answered, Arishem, Exitar, Ziran, Tefral. They descended in silence, divine frames burning with judgment. They had seeded worlds, sculpted galaxies, dictated who lived and who vanished. Now one of their greatest threats had defied them. It was not rebalancing, it was reckoning. Ziran struck first. He fractured space and time, casting Galactus into an endless loop of unfulfilled hunger and erasure. But he didn't resist. He fed on the loop, on the paradox, on the decay of law, and shattered the snare. Tefral followed, launching engines of unmaking, rewriting Galactus's core with failed timelines. The Devourer responded with the world heart pulse, a blast of pure cosmic will carved from the ruins of fallen empires. Tefral flickered, and was no more. Exitar advanced, drawing the Omega Blade, forged from abstract truths. It pierced Galactus's armor, cutting through more than flesh, through essence. Galactus staggered, but his turbines ignited, absorbing meaning, memory, myth. He struck back with entropy made sentient, dropping Exitar to one knee. Then Arishem raised a hand. Judgment. Galactus began to dissolve, not die, unexist. What he was, what he meant, was being erased. But within the erasure, he found clarity. He was not Devourer, not a mistake. He was choice. He was change. He roared. And with focused defiance, he struck Arishem, not with chaos, but with the culmination of all that had ever fallen into him, whole civilizations reduced to truth. Arishem broke and fell. Exitar rose, barely standing, and summoned the prime spark, the final edict of creation, to obliterate Galactus fully, forever. The air warped, reality bent, but Galactus activated his last weapon, the World Heart Core, not fired, not aimed. He simply became it. Exitar lunged. They collided. Two infinities shattered into one, and when the void cleared, only one remained. Galactus stood, weakened but victorious. The Celestials were gone, scattered, broken, or fled. He had not just survived judgment, he had devoured it.